two main passages where in the New Testament where Jesus speaks about the harvest. One is he's sending out his disciples 2 by 2, and he says to them, "The harvest is plentiful, the workers are few, so pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers." And then he sent them out. But then there's also in John chapter 4, where Jesus goes into the city of Samaria there, and he makes this declaration to the disciples, and he said, "Lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white unto harvest." And so we've been trying to understand the harvest from heaven's point of view. What was Jesus talking about? And how do we participate in that? Because the Lord is about to bring in a harvest of people to himself in an unprecedented way in these last days before Jesus comes back. And so we want to be ready. We want to position ourselves. And over the years, I've been trying to say, "Lord, what does this look like? How do we function with you in reaching people? And what is the harvest anyway? And how do you harvest? What does that look like?" And actually, I've seen a lot of stuff over the years that I haven't been very impressed with. That's in the name of evangelism, and we live in a time right now in our nation where if you call yourself an evangelical, meaning that you believe the Bible is actually true, and that there really is a heaven and a hell, and that you need to respond to God's message of the gospel, and you believe that needs to be communicated to people. If you're an evangelical, you are not highly thought of in America. And we got a bad rap on that, and a lot of it is because you can't bring the good news and be the bad news. And a lot of people think we are the bad news. A lot of people aren't interested in having something shoved down their throat, and we're become professionals at doing that. And we beat up a lot of people. We thump a lot of people. Someone was sharing with me a couple of weeks ago that they were just walking through a park, and some pastor walked up to him and said, "Have you heard about the coming judgment?" And fortunately, he was quick on his feet, and he said, "No, but I heard about Jesus who came to set us free from judgment." He said, I recall this verse that Jesus said, "The Son of Man did not come to judge, but to seek and to save those who are lost." And he said the pastor didn't know what to do with that and walked on. But that's kind of, we're just, I don't think we have had the heart of Jesus hardly at all in what we've been doing in trying to finish the work that Jesus began as he came from the Father to seek and to save those who are lost. And so I've just been sharing some thoughts. I don't have any definitive answers. I say that right up front. I'm in this journey along with you to try and understand God's heart, but I'm discovering a lot of things. I just want to start with Revelation chapter 5. Because this is just so pivotal. We need heaven's perspective to understand how God is seeing the whole world, to seeing all of mankind, and what is it that we're involved in. By the way, the Lord of the harvest is Jesus himself. He is the one who has come and initiated all of this. So I wanted to start with Revelation 5. And because there's something here that is just so important for us to understand as we look at people, because the harvest is just people, isn't it? It's God trying to bring people to himself. This whole thing of the harvest is people being reconciled back to their Creator Father who loves them and has a plan for their life. It says that, I'll start with verse 6 in chapter 5. I saw between the throne with the four living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if slain. He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God, sent out into all the earth. And he came and he took the book out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song. How many believe we're going to hear some songs in heaven being sung by the heavenly hosts themselves? They sang a new song, and these were the lyrics. Worthy are you. Now, who are they speaking of? They're speaking of this Lamb. Worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. And you have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. So pack that for a second. Then we're going to go to John 4. In heaven, there is this reality. The scripture says of Jesus that before he even came to the earth, before God sent him in time, in earthly time, that Jesus was the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. Now that tells us just a couple things. That first of all, that before God created the world, he knew you and I were going to blow it. He knew you and I, though he created us in his image, in perfect love, he knew that we were going to rebel against him, that we were going to seek after being our own gods and determine our own way, and that we were going to push him aside, and we were going to be completely focused on our own selves and the things of this world. He knew that there was going to need to be a redemption, a payment made, something that was going to be able to satisfy take care of our issue of our sin and our brokenness, to reconcile us back to the Father so that we would be one with him again. And that his purpose over our life, the very purpose for which he created us in the first place, would be accomplished. And that you and I would be able to live with him eternally. And the end goal is that you and I would reign with him here in the earth. Your future is not a cloud with a harp somewhere, or your favorite golf course in the sky, or whatever. You and I were created for extremely high purposes that have everything to do with the glory of God and his rule and reign over all things. And we were meant to be a part of it. We are his kids, and we have been brought into the family business. And so God, knowing what was going to happen, Jesus, he takes his son, Jesus, and before the world was even formed, Jesus takes on the identity of the Lamb who would be slain. And you have to understand, in heaven, that things don't operate according to our chronological time. They just are. He is the Alpha and the Omega at the same time, the beginning and the end. And so that's beyond our pay grade. It's beyond our brain power to comprehend that, because we don't know that experience here in the earth. But in heaven, things are, things were, they are to come, all at the same time. And he was the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. And what I'm saying to you this morning is that the Jesus who came He came to purchase. He was the lamb already slain, and yet he came in human flesh to be slain on that cross where he would be pierced, he would be put to death, taking all of our sin upon himself and all the wrath of God that we deserved upon himself. He took all of that in order to purchase us. It was the price that we could not pay ourselves. He paid the ultimate price. He was the only one who could do it. He purchased men for God. You and I were purchased. It wasn't good that God just said, oh, I feel sorry for you and I don't want you to go to hell, so I'll tell you what, I'll just forgive you, and because I love you so much, just come on in. There was a payment that had to be made, or you and I would never know God nor spend eternity with him, nor go on to rule and reign with him in his kingdom in the earth. There had to be a price paid, and Jesus was the Lamb. And we see that Passover lamb there as the Israelites were being brought out of Egypt, God instituted the Passover, and there was a lamb that would be slain, the blood sprinkled on the doorposts. And you have that complete picture there. It was a foreshadowing of what Jesus was yet going to do as the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. What I'm trying to say to you is that the Jesus that we see in the Gospels is he was encountering people. He already knew who he was. He already knew what the game plan was. I believe that before he even left heaven to come down to earth, he was already the Lamb slain who had already purchased men for God. And I can't wrap my brain around that. And yet he's going to fulfill in the earth what is already true in heaven. He was going to go to the cross. Every person that Jesus met as the Lord of the harvest, every person that he met them as on the way to the cross to offer himself up, to be slain on their behalf, to purchase them for God. And every person he met, he saw them, and he saw somebody who was going to rule and reign with him in the earth forever. That's a different way to see people. So he sees somebody who's screwed up, messed up, broken, full of sin, whether they be tax collectors, prostitutes, whatever their history, or good, upstanding citizens full of religion and don't know how screwed up they really are on the inside. But they look perfect on the outside. Every single one that Jesus met, he saw somebody being purchased with his blood. He looked at them and he saw that they were redeemable and being prepared to rule and reign with him. That might change the way that you look at somebody, would it not? This story in John chapter 4 of the woman at the well, the more I look at it, the more it just blows me away. You can turn there real quick if you want, but I just want to hit a couple points and we're going to wrap up here. Jesus is traveling through the countryside and he's on his way to somewhere else, and he comes to, verse 5, he comes to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. See, Jesus shows up in real places where you live. He shows up in there isn't any place that anybody lives that he isn't there, that he isn't showing up. I remember I was I had been invited to come and speak in Thailand in the city of Pattaya, which is known for being like the prostitute capital of the world. I was a little nervous going there. They brought me up to checked me into my room at the hotel. They opened up the door, and the place was absolutely trashed from who knows what happened the night before. They close the door quickly and say, excuse us, sir, give us 5 minutes. And they very quickly clean up the room and all the rest. And I remember coming back into the room later and thinking, I wonder what happened in here last night. I mean, the beer cans and stuff just everywhere. And I thought, well, Lord, I'm in the middle of it, aren't I? Welcome to Pattaya. And I remember looking out the window and from several stories up, looking down and seeing some of the squalor of shacks and other kinds of things. It just, everything I could see just looked like just darkness. So it's like, and I found myself saying, God, what am I doing here? I want to go home. And I was intimidated by just all of that. And I thought, Lord, what good can I do here? And the Lord invited me to go back to the window and look out again. And he said, Paul, what do I see? And then that verse came, that the knowledge of the glory of God will cover the whole earth as the waters cover the sea. He said, Paul, I brought you here to reveal my glory. Is there any place that my glory cannot come? Is there any place where I, Jesus, cannot walk in because I carry something that can change this place and touch the people here? Paul, is there just even one miracle that I want to do where I can use you to reveal myself to just one person here and change this city? I said, yes, Lord. And that changed everything for me. I had a chance to look out that window and in the very room that I was going to spend the next couple of nights in and see that this is a city that Jesus is coming to. The one who is slain before the foundation of the world, the one who has purchased men for God. And I realized that this city is full of people that have already been purchased. The city is full of people that God sees ruling and reigning with him forever. And I just heard the Lord say, go get them. Don't stay in your room, Paul. Get out there. And it was so beautiful that night we had a meeting there at the church that invited us to come. And I was just just really came to do kind of a healing seminar for them. And God gave me a word about a woman having some issues, some female issues, something going on in the uterus, in the womb area. And I had no idea, but I said, who is that? And this young lady stands up. She had been part of the prostitution system there. She had been out there on the streets for years being used by men, many of them American. She came up to the front. She was a brand new Christian. Somebody had reached her and found her and brought her to Jesus. Only one problem is she had cancer in the uterus. Guess what? From all those years of abuse. And now she's come to Jesus, but she's got cancer. And it was so precious to be able to just put my hand on her back and just say, Jesus, thank you that tonight you healed this woman. and you set her free. Let her just taste and see that you were the right one for her to come to, and that she's got a glorious future. And she felt the power of God go right through her body. She felt heat just come all through this part of her body. And she's standing there in front of everyone in that room going, whoa. Never expected this. You see, she's one purchased with precious blood for God. She's one that Jesus saw ruling and reigning with him. How many people walked down that street and saw her standing on some corner somewhere, whatever, and how many Christians and said, well, we know where she's going to spend eternity. But Jesus had a different idea. All of her pain left. She could feel a dramatic change in her body right there. Whoa. And all I could say when I saw what God did is that I'm so glad I walked out of my hotel room. I'm so glad that I saw what you can see, Jesus. I wasn't even thinking about harvest. I wasn't thinking about, we got to see who we can reach or whatever. But the Lord had been thinking about that woman a lot. And he couldn't wait for me to get out of my room, to get into that place, and for that woman to get into that place, and then bring a word of revelation about healing a condition in this part of the body for a woman. And then she could be healed within just 2 minutes. Boom, it's just done. Which, by the way, unleashed a wave of healing. Multiple people got healed over the next couple of days, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So he came to this city, and Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, being wearied from his journey, was sitting thus by the well, and it was about the 6th hour. Wow, even Jesus got tired. He's the Son of God, and yet he's fully man. So he's sitting by the well. His disciples go into the town to go buy some food. But this is what jumped out at me, the next verse. There came a woman of Samaria to draw water. As I was reading that those words just jumped off the page of me. There came a woman. And what is the reality? The reality is that there's always a woman. There's always a man. There's always somebody who is on the earth right now with needs. They're real people. They're alive right now. And they're busy doing life. They're trying to figure out how to get their needs met. They're trying to figure out how they're going to make it through this day and into tomorrow. They've got hopes and dreams, and many of them, those hopes and dreams have already been crushed so much that they're not even thinking about the future anymore. They're just thinking about survival. But there came a woman. And as I was reading that, I felt like the Lord said to me, that's every one of us in this room. There came a living, real person. A lot of times we read these stories and it's almost like a fairy tale. It's almost like just a story of something that's not even real. But I tell you, this is a real person. Let's talk about this woman. We know as we read further into the story that she's a woman who's been married 5 times. And if you're a good religious Christian who knows the laws and therefore you've become an expert at being judgmental. You read that story and say, oh, she was divorced 5 times. Boy, she must be quite a piece of work, and she just dumps her husbands. No, actually, the husbands dumped her. A woman who's been married 5 times, hoping for love, hoping for security, hoping for the dignity that they looked for in their culture at that time of, I have a husband that somehow legitimizes my life and that I have value, that somebody wants me, and I can have a family. And because in this culture, to be single, to not have a husband was a pretty risky thing. And it didn't make you look very good. And she was so desperate to have the appearance of having a man in her life, and that she finally just, when no man would have her, she's now selling herself to just live with the man for whatever he wants to do to her, just so she can say, I got a man. I look like I'm married. So who is this woman? She's broken. She's hurting. She's got massive rejection in her life. Who knows how abused she was through all 5 of those marriages. You see, the man had the power to just write a note of divorce and just send a woman packing without even having to give a reason for it. What does she feel about herself? What does she think about herself? What about when she's walking down the street in this town, small town, you know, everybody knows everybody, and how about all the gossip that's gone on in her city about her? And what's her life like? What are her hopes and dreams? See, this is the woman that is carrying her jar, her probably big clay jar, to come and get water from the well. You guys see, she gets up every day, she needs to drink. She's thirsty. And she has to do this every single day. She has to walk out of her house. She's got to carry that jar. Her husband's not doing it. She's got to do the work. And she goes all the way out to that well, because it wasn't in the city center. It's outside of the city. She's got to go all the way out there. She's got to make eye contact with all kinds of people who probably are not thinking real highly about her. You know anybody like that? It's real life, right? Real pain, real brokenness, real shame, hopelessness. This is the woman that's coming out to the well. At least I can get water to drink, to take care of my thirst and to cook with. And she gets to do this every single day. It just so happens that on this day, Jesus is at the well. Because he's tired and he's thirsty. And I had to ask myself as I'm reading this story that really happened. When Jesus, who's already sitting there at the well, sees this woman coming toward him, what's going through his mind? Because, see, you and I, every time we meet somebody, we got something going through our heads. Is that not true? We're kind of a, we're in this thing called relationship. And most of the time we don't really want one when it's a stranger and it's in a public place. And of course, in this situation, there's nobody else there except Jesus and this woman that's coming to the well. And you and I go through a whole process of how we engage people or find a way to not engage them. Just look away. I was kind of observing myself the other day as I can't remember. I think we were at the airport coming home from Colorado this week, and a lot of people in that airport, a lot of people on those planes, and it's interesting how we walk through places like that, and how we manage all those relationships, and who we're not going to talk to, and who we're just avoiding connecting with people, and how many times we just don't look at somebody because it's just easier. Because here the problem is that when you look at somebody, you have to take in who they are, and who they are as a real person might have some impact on you. You might actually have to care about them. You might have to value them. You might have to engage them in some way, maybe even in a conversation. And so it's just easier, to just not connect, right? And a lot of times we just don't connect because we're afraid. Part of our fear is because we don't even know what our own value is, and we're afraid of how people are going to see us and how they're going to respond to us. And sometimes, we're concerned about the other person and who they might be, and so we just don't want to go there. But Jesus is sitting at the well, and here comes this woman. She's the real deal. She's the package that she is. Except this one that's sitting at the well looking at her as she's coming, he's looking with a different set of eyes. And this is what I'm praying for me. I'm praying that I'm going to learn more and more to start seeing people not as a package of their history and what they look like or how they might respond to me or whatever. I want to see people, first of all, the way the Father sees them. Because it was the Father who created them and put the purpose and plan over their life that they would be with Him forever. Forever in this massive love experience. And that they would be with His Son, ruling and reigning over all that God has created forever. And so the Father, who puts such incredible value on us, asks the Son, will you be the Lamb slain? Because they're too valuable to me. They must be redeemed. They must be purchased. Otherwise, they'll be lost in judgment. They'll be lost in deception to what Satan has done in the earth. And Jesus, the Son, who is fully in love with the Father, says, yes, Father, I love them too the way you love them. And the Bible tells us that God the Father was in the Son when He came to the earth and when He went to the cross to reconcile us to Himself. I believe that when Jesus saw that woman, it's very possible that He knew a whole lot about her just with every step she was taking closer to the well. And here's the thing is that before you open your mouth to try to talk to somebody about their need for Jesus or why they should believe in God or try to share the gospel with them, it might be helpful if you actually know them. That you care enough about them to see them the way the Father sees them. And I think that when Jesus saw her coming, He saw a woman dejected, a woman ashamed, a woman deliberately avoiding eye contact with Him. And you have this look on you that you get, when you're busted and broken in life, and you just believe that nobody could really love you. and you struggle to love yourself. We just have that look, even when we're trying to smile. And I believe that Jesus saw this woman, and he didn't see a Samaritan, and he didn't see a messed up basket case. He saw someone that the Father loves, as someone that the Father created in his image, someone that the Father had chosen, someone who was already purchased. He saw someone that he's going to go to the cross for her. And he sees a woman, instead of seeing a woman who's been married 5 times and now living with a man, he sees a woman ruling and reigning with him for eternity. How many think we need to get a revelation? We need to see differently than we see. Instead of moving into our judgments and our insecurities and so forth, that if we could see what God sees, it would change the way that we interact with people and the way that we talk with them. And I don't think that Jesus had an agenda, say, okay, here comes another person I'm going to win to me, to believe in me, and then I'm going to rescue them from hell, and, another notch on my belt. Another one saved, going to heaven. Now, I think he saw a woman. And he saw the value the Father had put on this woman. He saw someone he's going to pay a price for. He sees her in the future, not as a mess, but as royalty in the house of his Father. And so it changes the way he talks to her. She's expecting him to avoid her because he's a Jew and she's a Samaritan. He's a man, she's a woman. She's thinking this, I'm just going to slip in here. I'm not even going to talk, look at him. I'm just going to get my water and get out of here. And Jesus breaks the entire moment of her shame and her fear by saying, woman, would you give me a drink? And he engages her. He treats her as someone who has value and worth and somebody he wants to know. That she matters. And he even humbles himself to say, would you give me a drink? I don't have a way to get a drink. I need for you to help me. And I want to drink from your pot or your dipper or whatever she had. And she is absolutely rocked and just said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you engaging me this way? That's just shaking her up. There's a lot of people in our future that God's giving us the power to shake up their lives with some love. By you and I just seeing them and looking beyond where they've been and what they've done and whatever they may be projecting, because you know how people tend, you know how it's hard to love somebody that looks like on the exterior, don't talk to me, don't see me, I don't want to know you, get away from me. The quills are out. And we say, you're right, I don't want to talk to you. And we go the other direction. But you do it anyway. You move into their space with something as simple as connecting on the level of what's happening at the moment. What was happening at the moment? Water. The common need for water. She needs water, Jesus needs water. And Jesus takes the simplest circumstance and turns it into an engagement of love. He's not judging her. He's not saying, oh, boy, she's a piece of work. boy, it's going to take a lot of blood for her. I don't know why my father is interested in her. It's just. By the way, when it says that Jesus purchased men and women for God, he wasn't being selective, like, well, I'm just going to get the cream of the crop here. He purchased all without respect for their lives or their resistance or their rebellion or the level of sin in their lives. He purchased them all. And so everyone that Jesus sees, he's already in love with them because he's already going to pay and has paid the price for them. Woman, would you give me a drink? And he just engages her on this level. Treating people the way we want to be treated, honoring people the way we want to be honored, loving people the way that we want to be loved, seeing people the way we want people to see us. That's actually not that hard. But the Lord wants to show us how he sees people. And so when this woman comes to the well, Jesus is not put off by any aspect of who she is. He's not put off by her exterior. He's not put off by any of the social stuff going on. He just engages her at the simplest point of common need. They both need water. And he opens a door into her life by just saying, give me a drink. And I don't think we do that very often with people, because we've already decided that there's something that we don't want to know. There's something that we don't want to be involved in. But here's the thought that I had, and I'll close with this, is that if the person that I see, the person that I meet, the person that I encounter, however I encounter them, if God opened my eyes to see them the way he sees them, how would that change my view of them and how I'm going to engage them, the way I'm going to talk to them, the way that I'm going to treat them? How would that change the dynamic of what's happening? Instead of me trying to figure out, how am I going to reach them for Jesus? How am I going to get them into heaven? Just simply seeing them the way that the Father sees them, and then begin to love them the way the Father loves them. And let God change my view. Let him open my eyes to see somebody. Now here's the scary part about it, is God shows you how he sees them. The possibilities that you begin to see in their life now become God's call to you to nurture it, to pull it out. When Jesus saw that woman, he didn't see garbage. He saw gold. He saw the treasure of heaven. It just got covered over with a lot of garbage. And he began to reach in and draw out what he knew the Father had already spoken over her life. And the end result of that is, through this conversation that he's having with her, he's not preaching at her, he's just working with her and pulling out what's in her heart that had been so masked over by so much pain and confusion and religious rejection and all the rest, that by the time they're finished talking, she's saying, oh my God, God is here, engaging me, loving me, valuing me. Could this be what I've been looking for all along? And she's so swept up in what she's experiencing with Jesus that she runs back into the city and just starts talking to all these men whom she probably was avoiding and saying, I think I just met the guy that we've all been looking for. And they all come out and they all meet Jesus. And they all have the same experience with Jesus. Instead of them coming out and saying, oh, he's a Jew, they say, oh, he's the Messiah. And they welcome him for 2 days. And Jesus is happy to stay with them in a Samaritan's house. He stays with them, fully loving them, fully accepting them. Anyway, this will go into next week. There's more here. Okay, just some thoughts. I hope I'm painting a picture for you. I didn't feel like I did it very well today. But it's called just real life. I'm thirsty, I got to go to the well. There's somewhere I've got to be in life where I'm just taking care of business and meeting needs and all the rest. But everywhere where I'm going, there are other people with the same needs, and I'm going to run into a whole bunch of them. And if God opens my eyes and I recognize I'm in a moment of connecting with somebody that Jesus has already purchased, this could get really interesting. God might use me to touch them and change their life. I think this is what the harvest looks like. Wow. Okay. Well, Lord, we just thank you for our time today. Lord, I'm just praying that we have had some hope here today, and we see the possibility of you coming and just making the biggest difference in our lives. And you've got a plan. It's awesome. And we're part of the plan. And Lord, you have called us and empowered us to be involved in this. And so, Lord, we ask that you lift up our eyes to see what you see so that we can do what you do. And that we can touch people the way you touch them. That we can bring your very word to them